Good evening, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you are joining us. Uh, my name is Scott Sinclair. I'm the Senior Manager of Programs here at Cancer and Careers, and I want to welcome you to this evening's webinar. For those of you who are dialing in from your phone, if you could let us know by sending an email to cancerandcareers@cew.org with your name and the number that you're dialing in from. That way we can make sure that we confirm your attendance and you receive all of the relevant follow-up information after the webinar today. Now, if you are new to Cancer and Careers, first of all, welcome. We are glad to have you here. We are a national nonprofit and the only program of its kind solely dedicated to empowering and educating people with cancer to thrive in their work environments. This slide has a list of all of our free programs and services that we offer. Our comprehensive website is available in both English and Spanish and is the heart of everything that we do. There you can find various support services, including our resume review service and access to career coaches. Our educational blog and newsfeed are both rich resources where those who have been diagnosed, their caregivers, employers, healthcare professionals, everyone can stay updated on current topics related to work and cancer. We also have our free publication library, which is available in both English and Spanish and provides tangible, easy to digest information on working or looking for work after a cancer diagnosis. And those are available both in hard copy and PDF formats. We also offer numerous events every year, like hour-long webinars, which you're about to see right now, to full-day conferences. And I'll be back at the end of the presentation today to tell you a little bit about what we have coming up. Now, for those of you who are seeking continuing education credits, this slide lists all of the requirements and the organizations who have accredited today's webinar. Uh, this information is available on our website as well, and a link to the evaluation and the post-test will be shared at the conclusion of today's webinar. So if you have a moment, please take time to complete that then. If you are unable to complete that tonight, that is also fine. You will receive an email tomorrow, no later than 5 p.m. Eastern time, with all of those links and follow-up information. And for those of you who are not requesting continuing education credits, we also really need to hear from you too. So please consider taking time to fill out the evaluation. You do not need to do the post-test if you're not seeking continuing education. These evaluations really help us know what is working and what's not working with our programs so that we can serve you best. And it also helps us show the value of our programs to our funders so that we can continue to invest in our future. Also, for those of you planning to request continuing education credits, our accrediting bodies require us to share this slide and let you know that there are no conflicts of interest to report. I will let you read that for a second. Okay, so as you might know, Zoom has a lot of great features which you can use to interact with the event today and with other attendees. You'll notice a chat box in your features panel. Feel free to use the chat box to communicate with our speakers, staff, other attendees. However, it is important to note that the chat box is not private and it will show your first and last name. So that's something to be mindful of when or if you decide to engage in those chats. You'll also see a Q&A box. If you have any questions, feel free to drop those questions in the Q&A box and we will try to get to as many as we can after the presentation. Now we know the importance of privacy, so there is an option to submit your questions anonymously in the Q&A box. And we ask that any questions go in that Q&A box, not the chat, as we might miss them in the chat box. If we don't get to your question today, please shoot us an email at cancerandcareers@cew.org, and we will make sure that we get an answer for you as soon as we can. Now, thanks in part to Genentech and P&G Beauty, Cancer and Careers is proud to offer our 11th year of the Balancing Work and Cancer webinar series, which was created to provide anyone whose life has been touched by cancer with concise, targeted information about work-related issues that arise after a diagnosis. Additionally, we would like to recognize Cancer and Careers as year-round sponsors who support all of our core programs and allow us to continue providing resources and services free of charge. Now, before I hand things over, To Ariane, I would love to just set the stage for today's discussion. So let's briefly take a step back and look at the bigger picture of what people often experience looking for work after a cancer diagnosis. There are many challenges and unknowns with any job search, which can bring up a range of emotions. There can be days where you get a bunch of calls for interviews and you feel really, really great. And that can be followed by days where it feels like a never-ending sea of challenges. And sometimes that cycle is likely to repeat itself over and over a few times. So it's important to find ways to hold on to and to build your self-confidence despite these inevitable ups and downs. And one way to do this is looking for opportunities to take actionable steps that can help you feel more in control of your experience. So things like being strategic in your approach to finding new opportunities and telling the story of who you are and what brings you to the table as a potential candidate. Now, developing an awareness of who you are and what skills and accomplishments that you bring to the table and know how to market yourself by clearly communicating these things to a potential employer is key to any job search. However, with that said, we've noticed through the years that people in the cancer community also tend to hold themselves to a higher standard than others who are looking for work. Often survivors feel obligated to share more of their health history or personal information than they have to or that they should, and more than someone without a cancer diagnosis would ever even consider sharing. But the reality is, generally, there is no obligation to disclose any details of your health or your health history, either at work or during a job search. And in fact, we often say that looking for work is like dating. There are various steps involved, and the process builds upon itself. And it can be heavily focused on making a great first impression. And to help us with this, we are really lucky to have an expert in this, in understanding how to create a first impression when looking for work. So Ariane Hunter is a career change strategist, speaker, and author of the book Dreaming on Purpose, a manifesto for Black women on taking the leap, building your dreams, and being your own boss. Her work has been featured on CNBC, Business Insider, Diversity Inc., Fast Company. I could keep going, but we don't have all the time in the world. But those are just a few to start. Uh, Again, I'll be back at the end to go through some Q&A questions. And so feel free to drop any of those in the Q&A box. But for now, I am going to hand it over and say thank you and welcome to Ariane.
Thank you so much, Scott, and welcome everyone to the call. This could be anywhere in the world right now, but you're spending your time with us at Cancer and Careers, so I thank you. My name is Ariane Hunter, as Scott has mentioned. I'm really, really thrilled to be here with you all today for this incredibly important conversation. So I'm a career change strategist, I'm an author, I'm a caregiver, I'm someone who deeply believes that your story, your strengths, your spirit are your greatest assets, especially in the job search. So, we're really going to take today's conversation to explore how do you market yourself effectively? How do we come out of our shells and really own the assets that make us who we are, right? And lead from that place. How can we tell our career story with confidence, making sure that we're making empowered decisions and not being defined by our story, but empowered by it, right? So it's really about these decisions about what's next for you, whether you're returning to work, you're a career changer. As Scott mentioned, you had a recent cancer diagnosis, and just figuring out what's right for you and what's next in this chapter. So we're going to discover all of that today. I hope that you have a pencil and paper handy. We're going to go through a lot of notes. So if you're a paper and pen type of person like myself, feel free to grab one and make sure that there's one nearby. Otherwise, a Google Doc, writing notes on your laptop will be just fine as well. So, what are we covering today? Right. So, as I mentioned, today is about how do you market yourself? We're going to talk about the overview of what a personal brand is, You may have had, the opportunity to hear conversations like this before in terms of what a personal brand is. So take what works for you, leave the rest. So again, this is, whether you're actively job searching or pivoting in your career, thinking about what's next. We're going to go through these elements here and sort of have you position yourself to prepare for this next chapter. So that involves identifying your own unique value, right? What do you do? What is your secret sauce that you can lead with? We're going to talk about creating that brand statement, right? Because writing it down really locks it in and being able to bring that forward as you're navigating your job search. We're going to talk about networking, right? How that becomes a part of the job search strategy. Your elevator pitch. We're also going to dig in a little bit to content creation and thought leadership. Have you ever thought of yourself as a thought leader, right? So that might be a question that we're welcoming in and we're becoming curious about. And then we're going to just pull it all together. We'll save some time at the end for Q&A, and then we'll go from there. All right. So the most important thing to keep in mind here is that we have a beautifully diverse group here today across industries, across experiences, identities. We have caregivers, we have healthcare providers, we have cancer patients and survivors, right? But we all share something in common, right? And that's how to navigate our career decisions and manage personal challenges from a place of resiliency. Right. So this isn't just a conversation about your resume or your elevator pitch, although we will get into those elements here tonight. But it's really about reclaiming your narrative, right? Being in control and taking power, in your story. So we're going to talk through that today. Okay. So when it comes to your personal brand, right, I like to think of it as crafting your narrative. What is your story of resilience in your professional career? So, when you hear the words personal brand, what comes to mind? I just want to give you a few seconds. Go ahead and drop it in the chat. What comes to mind when you hear the words personal brand? So, as those answers are coming in, maybe you think about your personal brand as a logo or a corporate identity. Elena says advertisement. Absolutely. A personal brand could be how you advertise, your sales pitch, what you're known for. Yes, you guys are hitting it. Who you are, what you stand for. I love this, right? It is, in fact, the narrative, the through line of your experience, right? The story of your resilience. And we're here to really shape that story today, right? Your mission statement, your niche. I love this. Absolutely. So let's dig a little bit deeper. Why does it matter? Right? We can just coast through our careers and we can, not, define what our personal brand is, right? And sometimes this is an often overlooked part of our career identity is really honing in on our personal brand. But your personal brand is foundational, right? It's how people remember you. It's the reputation, it's the impact that you have on others, whether you're in a job interview or you're in a networking conversation. It's how people interact with you. What do they want to know you for, right? How they see you, how they see your impact. So, personal brands, it's really giving you the language to be able to talk about your career journey, to talk about your story, whether you're writing your LinkedIn profile, right, or introducing yourself at an event, you're navigating an interview. It is the uniqueness of you, right? It's also this opportunity to take control of the narrative, right? I like to think of it as your North Star for your career, right? A reflection of who you are and where you're going. So if you're not taking the steps to define who you are as a personal brand, it will be done for you, right? So this is an opportunity for you to get ahead of it, define your story, and be in control of your own narrative. So when we think about that, right? Handling disclosure decisions when you're navigating the job hunt, when you're on interviews, you have the power to decide whether or not you want to disclose your cancer diagnosis. Okay. This is completely in your control, considering, there are no requirements, generally speaking, to disclose either during a job search or to a current employer. Right. So choosing not to disclose is also a valid choice, right? That you get to make, right? So it's really tapping into what are you comfortable with? What do you want to share as part of your story, right? Disclosure is a personal decision, a personal choice. And again, you're not obligated to share it unless it serves your goals or makes you feel empowered. I really want us to lock that in and to really ground ourselves in that, right? And to really understand what am I comfortable sharing, in this scenario? How do I want to handle disclosure, right? And really being at the lead of that conversation. So when you think about personal brand, right? It's really about, again, we've been using this word again, telling your story, drafting your narrative. So I want to take a moment to just show you, how personal brand is a storytelling, is the art of storytelling, and looking at some real examples here. So these are some examples here. These are actual folks that I have worked with in the past, people who have redefined their career and leaned into their personal brand. So first we have Delia, right? So Delia was able to use her background as a director of women in business and turn that into an African-based touring company. I'll show you a little bit later on how she was able to draft her personal brand statement, really leveraging her skills in the international and national skill set and being able to take it into her next career direction. Arisha, she is also one of, talk about personal brand and leaving an impact, right? So Arisha started out as a high school teacher and she became an award-winning actress. You actually may have seen her on your television screen. She came from, the education world, and she actually always had dreams of becoming an actress. And one year she decided to take the leap and she decided to pursue her dreams and see that she could become an actress, right? And so you don't know if you don't try, right? So she was able to use the encouragement of her students in the classroom who knew that this was a dream of hers, right? And she was able to leverage her skill sets as a teacher in the acting realm. Same thing with Basila. So Basila, she's actually a client of mine, and she also is as a mentor. She was able to leverage her skill set as an executive director in a nonprofit to become a global speaker and author. So I can go on, right? It's really about what story that you want to tell. But what's the common thread, right, of this story? You own your narrative, right, and align it with your values and your goals. So why do we need a brand, right? So 74% of the population is more likely to trust someone who has an established brand. That is an extremely large percentage, right? So when you have that personal brand defined for you, it attracts the right opportunities because your personal brand should include your goals, your skill sets, and your values. So if you are able to articulate that clearly and that shows up consistently in all your career branding materials, your resume, your LinkedIn, right? You're going to be able to align with the opportunities that make sense for you, right? So it's having that personal brand makes it easier to communicate, right? And identify your value so that people understand right away. They don't just hire a resume, right? They don't just hire the person on the piece of paper. They hire stories, right? They hire alignment. They hire energy, right? So all of these things are packageable, right? And become an important part of your brand. So it's important to kind of think about your brand as the bridge between your experiences and the opportunities that you want to attract. So sometimes it's easier to kind of think about our personal brand from a corporate branding perspective. So when I say a corporate brand, maybe you might have your favorite companies that come to mind. Maybe it's Apple, maybe it's Target, maybe it's, well, maybe not so much Target, but Nike, right? Any of those brands you can think of that you maybe purchase their products or you trust them. It's what you feel when you think about that brand. Maybe that brand for you brings up feelings of trust, loyalty. So imagine applying that same clarity to your personal brand, right? So imagine when a person hears your name, right? Like, oh, I remember so and so. She's the one that XYZ, right? People can recall who you are even when you're not in the room, right? So again, imagine applying that same level of clarity to your brand, right? And knowing those emotions and qualities that you want to be associated with. So drop in the chat, right? I named a couple of examples there, but would love to hear from you all. What is your favorite brand and why? Take a few minutes to the shade at Target. Yes, I had to, Teresa. Um, Take a minute to share in the chat. What is your favorite brand? Think about maybe your favorite footwear or your favorite clothing brand or skin or beauty. If you're an active person, you like to work out, what are some brands that you associate with? Yep, REI, always get one fan of REI. Thrive Cosmetics, yes, I am a fan of Thrive as well. So tell me, what are the reasons why you chose the brand that you did, right? Think about what are some of the qualities that that brand has, right? That made you choose them, that made you think like, I want to support this brand. Got a lot of Thrive fans out there for sure. Yes, this is great. This is all about creating clarity for your brand. We have some people who are just, diehard fans of their brand and will not leave it no matter how much there are other options out there. I'm one of those people. But this is how you want to start to think about your brand. So let's talk a little bit about the golden circle. Maybe a few of you here have heard about this guy, Simon Sinek. He's a pretty smart guy. He has a popular framework. He actually started his career. One of the biggest highlights of his career is his TED Talk that he did called Starting with Why. So when you get a moment, highly recommend it. You can Google and check out his TED Talk if you haven't seen it already. But he's come up with this golden circle framework that I want to walk us through, right? Starting with the what, right? So when you talk about your what, right? These are your job titles, these are your skill sets, these are your strengths. This is the result, the output of the work that you do, right? And then you move into the inner part of that circle and you look at the how. This is your process. This is your problem solving approach, right? How do you do the thing that you do, right? Uniquely well, right? And then the center is that why. This is really the sweet spot. This is your purpose, right? This is why you get out of bed in the morning, right? This is the thing that drives you. And it's going to be different for different people, right? And it should be, right? So this is where you want to lead. Most people though, lead with the what, right? So this is maybe their job title or their skill set. And that's fine too, but that's not where it ends, right? The real connection is when you lead with your why. So let's look at an example. Cancer and careers example, right? So cancer and careers empowers and educates people with cancer to thrive in their workplace by providing expert advice, interactive tools, and educational events, right? So you know what they do, you know what the value is, right? So they're what? The job boards, webinars, resources, access to coaches, right? That is what they provide. The how is through expert advice, tools, education, but their why, right? It's about helping people with cancer thrive at work, right? So these are the things that you want to connect with when you think about your personal brand. Why do you get up every morning to do the thing that you do? What is the why? What is the mission that drives you every day? So let's look at another example, the water bottle example, I like to call it. So imagine, right? I said, hey, you know what? I'm going to quit this career coaching thing and I'm going to go sell water bottles. Yep, that's what I'm going to do. You probably would look at me like I'm nuts. Like, why is she doing that? Right? But if I said to you, I actually care about the environment, I care about bottles that were designed for reuse, right? I want to eliminate waste or reduce waste. Then my why starts to become a little bit more, more understandable. Like, oh, okay, she's being led by a purpose. She's being led by something that is important and that is in alignment with her values, right? So thinking about it from, again, that perspective. But when you think about your personal brand, it really should answer that question of why should I hire you? Why should I hire you? Why should an employer give you this opportunity? So again, your brand, that unique promise of value, what you bring to the table every single day, it's consistent, it's unique, right? It's all about getting your potential clients, your employer to choose you as the only solution to their problem, right? So if you don't believe it, right, why should they believe it, right? So how can you hone your strengths, your assets, your passions, your interests, right? And put it together so that you can lead from that place, so that people are immediately, the right people and the right opportunities will immediately respond to you. Okay. So your brand statement defined, right? It's what you are, what you're best at, right? That's your value, your strengths, what you do really well. Who do you serve, right? Who's the audience that gets to benefit from what you do, right? How do you do it differently? What is your process, right? How do you provide solutions, right? This sums up your unique promise of value. Think of it as that summary of your purpose and your promise. Clear, bold, uniquely you. Bringing that statement to life. Passions, right? How you communicate who you are and what you do, how you communicate your story, things that you can't wait to get to every single day, right? That when you don't have an opportunity to do it, you feel like, oh, I'm cheating out of this opportunity, you know? So aligning with your passions, your strengths, what are those strong characteristics, those qualities, those skills? And then how would others describe you? What makes you stand out, right? So it's okay if you don't have all the answers to these questions now. This is your personal brand is not something that you draft in a day. It really takes time and thought, right, to really draft out these answers. I'm going to talk about that and how to do that in just a bit. But really taking time with this practice, I do recommend a couple times a year, making sure that you're working on your brand, that it still feels relevant to you, especially as we navigate different chapters of our career and our lives. Some things change and shift, right? Something that you valued maybe a year ago, maybe a little bit different today, right? And that's okay. So making this an integral part of your career and your practice, right? To make sure those components, those pieces of you that you lead with remain consistent over time. All right. So we don't have too much time to get into this today, but I do want to run through this and have you work on this after today's session or later on this week, this personal brand exercise. This really helps to put it into practice, right? So open up a Google Doc or a notepad, start to list out what are some words that you believe describes you really well, right? Just list them out, stream of consciousness, right? Choose three words from that list, right? That describes your brand. Maybe you're mission driven, you're creative, innovative, tech driven, purpose driven, right? And I want you to look up the textbook definition of each of those words, right? What is the textbook definition? How is it traditionally defined? And then specifically, I want you to ask yourself, right, and write down, why would a company be interested in hiring someone with this attribute? So this is what it would look like. So you have your list of keywords, right, on the far left, in the middle, the textbook definition, and why it's valuable to that employer, right? So for example, maybe you can come up with ideas on the fly, right? Maybe you increase click-through rates for a social media campaign in your previous role. How can you turn that personality into a professional value, right? Coming up with new ideas on the fly. Not everyone can do that, right? How can you hone in on that secret special sauce that only you can? So here's a few words. This is definitely by no means an exhaustive list here, but I encourage you, take a look at these words that describe yourself. Maybe you want to come up with a few words on your own. Really have fun with this, right? What are the words that best describe you? Brainstorm these words, really sit with it, not just professionally, but holistically too. Think about how people experience you. What do they say about working with you? Right? And that actually brings me to my next point. So when going through this exercise, sometimes, working on your personal brand can be a solo sport, right? But we want to include people who know us really well, people who we have interacted with in the past, people who we've worked with, right? To have a little bit more of a 360-degree view of how people see you. Sometimes people see you a little bit better than we see ourselves sometimes, right? So maybe we might have a skill that we do unconsciously. Maybe we're a great listener, we're a great writer. Some of the time we overlook some of the skill sets that we do really well, that we're really strong in, but that's the skill that people are drawn to about you, right? So I want you to think about who are some people in your circle, right? This is a great exercise. You don't have to do it right now. But text, I want you to think about 6 people in your circle. You can text or email them. These could be, colleagues, previous managers that you've worked with, coworkers. This can also be friends, mentors. I want you to split the list in half. Do about, 3 professional and 3 personal, right? And you can let them know, like, hey, I'm taking this course on personal branding. I'm doing an exercise. Um, what are some 3 words that you would use to describe me? Right? Just ask them. And it's a really great way to see how people perceive you, right? It's like, oh, I didn't know this person saw this attribute in me, right? So it's a really great way to kind of see how people are experiencing you. And you'll be delighted sometimes about some of the positive things that people will say about you. But I want you to take those words, create a list, identify those words that repeat, look for patterns, right? It's like, oh, this person, says that I'm a great listener. This has come up a couple of times. Okay, let me circle that, right? This outside feedback helps you discover your personal core or your personal brand, the core themes of your personal brand. And then what, right? So you have your list, right? You have the feedback that you've gotten back from your colleagues. I want you to be a detective in your own personal brand. So I want you to compile all the words that you received from the external 360 and the keywords that you've generated. Scan your findings. Again, notice some of those words or phrases that pop out at you. Don't overthink it, right? Just really be, kind of in the moment, in the flow of it. What are some phrases that really stuck out to you? And then choose what are those 5 words or themes that you strongly identify with, right? Circle them, highlight them, right? They can change down the line, it's okay. But choose what are those top words. And then making sure that those words come up in your personal brand statement. Let's look at an example. So this is Delia again. So this is the example of the director turned tourism policy leader, right? So if you read through here, she's a dedicated, driven professional with knowledge and experience in both the corporate and international development industries. My career is showcased by a track record in fulfilling the missions, objectives, and goals of organizations, right? With a unique grasp on Western and African work environment. She uses sharp insight combined with extensive work experience in both regions, right? So it shows depth, it shows her skill set, it shows her mission, her purpose, cultural influency, right? Or cultural fluency, sorry, global insight, right? Your statement can be used in bios, resumes, networking intros, elevator pitch, LinkedIn headlines, right? So this is why we do this, right? To really get clear on how do you want to articulate our story. So where might this come up? Where might your personal brand statement come up throughout your job search and throughout your career? Where might you use your brand statement, right? So definitely your LinkedIn bio. Thinking about your personal brand as your anchor. This should be consistent across the board. What's on your LinkedIn profile should reflect what's on your resume and vice versa, right? Your elevator pitch. This is when you take your personal brand statement to life, right? And interactive networking conversations. So what's your elevator pitch? You can really bring your personal brand statement to life. Interviews, same thing. The most common question that you will get on interviews is tell me about yourself, right? So being ready, being prepared to be able to use that personal brand statement in that scenario. Networking, which we'll talk about in just a minute. So networking conversations, making that first impression, right? Your personal brand is really that package statement so that people know who you are and what you do right away. They can think about you for opportunities that might come across, their desk, right? And it can reflect back on a conversation that they just had with you, right? So if you're able to articulate that with clarity, it's going to help people know how to help you. And then again, on your website, your personal brand statement should appear on your website as well. When you have your about me statement, or when maybe you have your resume on your website as well, right? Again, you want to make sure that your brand statement is consistent across the board. So I just want to say here, just to pause and say that when you talk about your personal brand, when we do the work of defining what that is, right? Your personal brand is going to be evolving. It's a living, breathing thing, right? As long as you are changing directions, going through life, navigating different scenarios, there might be different iterations of your personal brand along the way, and that's okay. Maybe where you are today, there's a trait that you want to be able to develop and that you don't quite have just yet. You want that to be your personal brand. That's okay. Make that part of your mission, make that part of your goals to develop that trait for yourself, right? So this is again an invitation to continuously learn, to continuously improve and become the person that you want to be. So again, if there is a word that you want to show up in your brand but didn't, again, that's okay. You now have a focus area. Now you can look for opportunities that can help you boost or build and develop that skill set if you don't feel that you're quite there yet. So again, asking yourself, what can you do to cultivate that trait in your work or your presence? How can you more fine tune your job search strategies so that you will be able to spot opportunities to build out, attributes and traits that you want to become part of your brand? Okay. So I mentioned networking before. So we're going to slide into this conversation a little bit more. I want to start with a question. So you talk about networking. Who here loves networking? Just is a pro at it, is able to do it pretty easily? Raise your hand or say it in the chat if you love networking. Teresa says, I do. And then we got a nope, big nope for Danielle. Ugh, yes, I know. I hear you. No, 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 we don't like networking. I totally understand. Some of us do. Some of us enjoy that interaction process and getting to know new people. So it really just kind of runs the gamut. And so I always like to start with that question just to see who's in the room. I always get kind of a split around I'm for networking or I would rather not do it if I didn't have a choice. But it is a necessary part of your career, a part of your job search. It's an anchor, right? Thinking about, how you can leverage your network when you're navigating, difficult times, when you're navigating a recent diagnosis. How can you build a safe community, right? A safe interaction with people and connect with people that are going to support you, especially during vulnerable times, especially during difficult times, right? And so when you think about, networking, 85% of jobs are found through referrals, right? So it's something that we really want to carve out time and invest in, especially as we're navigating different job opportunities and different career chapters. Networking is not, it is a two-way street, right? It's not just about asking for help all the time, right? It's about building trust and community, right? This is something that I feel really passionate about as we think about, our job search, developing ourselves professionally. Sometimes it's easy to do it alone and independently, and that's okay too. There's a time and a space for that. We really need to develop an ability to depend on each other and interdependence on each other to support, because you never know when a difficult time is going to hit. You never know when you are going to be needing help from your community, from your network, right? So it's best to think about how can you invest, in building these relationships and building trust before you need it, right? So especially for, as we navigate as cancer patients and survivors and caregivers, right? Our network is going to become a crucial anchor in the personal and professional sphere. So it's also a great way to practice your elevator pitch, build confidence. I promise you, the more you do it is the easier it does become, and you actually start to have a little fun. So Some of the common reasons I get about, feeling a little bit anxious about networking, and believe me, I get it. Let's be real, networking can be awkward sometimes, especially if you're an introvert. I'm an introvert. Sometimes it's not as easy to just put yourself out there, right? Sometimes you think you might be a bother to the person, like, oh, they're super busy. You might look at their LinkedIn profile and be a little bit intimidated by their profile, or maybe you're not, or you're not always sure on how to get started, right? But what I have found over the years of doing this and working with my clients is that people want to help, right? And sometimes you don't need to network in a room full of strangers and handing out business cards. And sometimes that feels a little bit mechanical and transactional, right? But it doesn't, it can be your own version of networking. Networking can happen one on one, it can happen in person, it can happen online. Excuse me, but 99.9% of the time, people do want to help you if only you would ask, right? So sometimes, it's like, how can you lean into something that might feel a little uncomfortable, right? And break through some of the stories that we might tell ourselves about, if someone wants to help us or not. Lean on your strengths, right? One-on-one networking is that. If that's more your jam, definitely lean into that, right? Versus being in crowded events. Maybe you're more on the extroverted side, and that's great too. So lean into what comes natural to you. If it feels forced, you're probably doing it wrong, right? So leaning into your community, leaning into those interpersonal networks. Again, these are going to be super foundational for your career. So where to get started, right? So I mentioned there's so many different ways to network. You can get creative. Again, there's so many tools and access to technology and online platforms that you can meet new people every single day. So LinkedIn, of course, right? That's probably one of the top platforms that you want to spend a lot of your time around. So doing some online networking over LinkedIn. LinkedIn does a really great job at showing you recommended people based on your profile and who's in your industry. LinkedIn will suggest people to you and say, hey, this is someone that you might want to know. So they make the job a little bit easier, in terms of finding those people that you want to connect with. So again, online networking or in person, choosing, again, what fits your, what you like to do naturally. um, Introduce yourself, right? Using opportunities even like this, right, to network with other people. Don't be shy, just introducing yourself in the chat, in channels, on Slack channels. Feel free to go ahead and introduce yourself here if you have a LinkedIn address that you want to share so folks can connect with you. Feel free to share it in the chat here. We're all here to be able to connect with each other. You never know, your next opportunity could be right in this room, right? So getting into the practice of showing up in how you network, right? So a few more networking hubs that I recommend here. So many of you may have heard of these top groups here. So meetup.com, doing a search, in on meetup.com for, different things that you might be interested in, different industries. If you're, in a particular industry, maybe you're in real estate, or maybe you're in marketing, some of these keyword search terms, you can look on meetup.com to find those active groups, how often they meet, things like that. They're usually free or low cost. Eventbrite, the same thing. These are really great platforms. Even social media like Facebook groups. There are a ton of professional development groups on Facebook, affinity groups that you can join. Again, these are all online. So that helps you to, expand your reach in terms of people that you can connect with. Asking your network, right? Posing the questions on social media, see who others are recommending, who are some thought leaders in your industry that you want to connect with or start to follow their work, right? So getting active, in your networking circles, asking people for ideas and recommendations, right? Again, this doesn't have to be a solo sport. So we want to talk about, in that vein of networking. So when it comes to reaching out to people, right? Start with people that you have something in common with. That will make it so much more easier, right? So sample message, feel free to screenshot this, or if this is helpful, you can use this in your own outreach to people. But this one is, from someone who's making a job change. Hey, I came across your profile, researching leaders in the industry, and your work came up and stood out to me. You want to make sure that you're personalizing this. Do your research. We'll talk a little bit about that in just a bit. This person is explaining fully that they're exploring their next move, right? And they're looking for new opportunities. They make it very clear of what they're looking for and what's happening for them, right? And then they make the ask. I'd appreciate the opportunity to hear your perspective on the industry and career navigation, and ending with a call to action, right? So if you're open to a 15-minute chat in the next week, I'd be grateful for your time and insights. Okay, so this doesn't have to be a long paragraph. It doesn't have to go into too much detail. Simple is best, but you always want to make sure that you are being clear on your request. Give an invitation, to hop on a call or to hop on the Zoom or even meet in person. Um, and this can be something that you tweak and hone just depending on who you're reaching out to. It might be a hiring manager, it might be an old colleague, right? But start with the people that you have something in common with. This makes it a little bit easier to get started. So informational interviews, or coffee chats, as I like to call them, what can you gain from them, right? I just want to pause here too, because I really want to encourage us as we think about our job search and certain things that we might be doing, boxes that we might be checking, as we're navigating a job search, right? So sending in those applications, tweaking the cover letters, tweaking the resumes, having, conversations with hiring managers, recruiters, things like that. But you want to make sure that you're integrating these informational interviews as part of your job search checklist, right? So sometimes it's nice to be able to get on the phone with someone else. Again, job search can be a solo sport sometimes. So networking, getting on the phone with someone else, having an engaging conversation about their industry or their career, informational interviews or networking chats. It's not just about advice, right? But they can really be gold mines, right? They can really be an opportunity to learn about a company that you might be interested in, but just wanting to know a little bit more about the company from an internal perspective. What are some of the skills that are in demand, for a role that you might be applying for? Who is hiring? What companies are what are these companies looking for? Right? This can be a gold mine. You can really get some insider knowledge just by reaching out to someone who is either affiliated with the company or works for the company, and just getting that additional insight on the company culture, things that are important to you, right? And then it's an opportunity to get feedback on your skills and your strategies in your own work, right? Sometimes you can share a little bit more with your connection about who you are, your background, your skill set, and you can get that feedback to say, hey, how would someone like me, a candidate like me, be able to position themselves within a company that you work for, right? So again, getting that specific feedback so that you can take it back, know the specific things that you want to hone and work on. It's really about, how can you pull back the curtain on your dream job, right? How can you find out from other folks, how you can start to tailor and navigate your job search? Okay. So how do you even get one, right? So we talked about starting with people that you know or someone that they know, right? So we talked about, Eventbrite, Meetup, looking at professional groups. I highly, highly recommend using LinkedIn. As I mentioned, starting with people that you probably have already people in your network, on LinkedIn. Look at the people that you are connected to on LinkedIn, right? Start a list, start to generate a list of people that you can reach out to, right? But before you do, you want to make sure that you're doing your homework, right? Do a little bit of research on that person, right? Who are you going to be meeting with? Read their profile, get to know them a little bit more, personalize the interaction. I think we can all relate to getting this mass email on LinkedIn with someone who's just copy pasting a message into hundreds of people, but you can tell that it's not personalized or tailored to you because they're probably using the message for other people. Don't be that person. Research the person that you're looking to connect with and make that deeper connection. Understand why. Why do you want to meet with them? What are some career paths that they've had? Their social media presence, roles that they've held, right? These are some of the things that you want to research and know offhand before getting on a call with them. What is it that you admire about this person? Maybe they have the career path or have the roles and the titles that you're aspiring towards. What is it that you want to learn about this person? The preparation that you do in the beginning helps to take the nerves off because you're doing that work to prepare and come into the call, prepared and having researched that person. What questions will you ask, right? Think of some questions that you might have for them. Maybe you have 2 to 3 questions or no more than 5 questions. What are some specific things that you want to get out of that conversation? Um, Again, what are some things that you want to bring to that conversation? Think again, networking is a two-way street, right? So how can you be of value to this person as well, right? Seeing if that person is connected with anyone else that you should talk to, right? As a matter of fact, I recommend before leaving, a call for an informational interview, ask that person, is there anyone else in your network that you think I should connect with or that you think I should know? Right. And oftentimes they can name person right off the top of their head or they can, give it some thought. But again, this is how we keep that networking, that relationship building going. All right. So we talked about this. So in person or virtual or over the phone. These are some questions I've listed out here that you can take to these informational interviews. Again, knowing that this is really about building rapport, getting to know them, seeing how you can exchange information and resources, and again, being of value to each other. So some sample questions are, what makes your job difficult? Tell me about a day in the life, a typical day. What are some of the important abilities that you think someone needs to do well here, right? So again, these are gold mine questions here that you can really get those insider insights about a particular company or a role that you're looking towards. Okay. So I want to shift us into content creation and thought leadership. This is an important piece when we talk about building our personal brand, right? So sometimes when we think about, our personal brand, it's important to think about our visibility as well, especially when you're navigating, different career chapters. Creating content positions you as an authority in your field. It's shown that 43% more of job opportunities are available to those excuse me, candidates that have an active blog or a content platform receive 43% more job opportunities, right? So part of building your brand is the content that you're putting out there. This can be in the form of, blog posts, videos, captions that you put on LinkedIn. Again, looking for those opportunities to position yourself as a thought leader. How can you package your knowledge, your insight, your problem solving ability, your perspective, in the industry, in your industry? How can you package that and share that, right? Because you never know how that might be valuable to someone receiving that, right? So when you are showing that you're active on LinkedIn, as a matter of fact, when recruiters are seeking job candidates, they are more likely to reach out to those people who are active versus those who are not active, right? So recruiters have access to Boolean searches and different tools on LinkedIn so that they can actually see your activity on LinkedIn, on platforms like LinkedIn. So be active. We're not talking every single day. You don't have to show up every single day and post things, but establishing a regular schedule that works for you. What content can I share? Oh, so many. So I don't want this to overwhelm you at all, but this could be some starting points on how you can think about the content that you do want to share. So how-to guides, tutorials, industry insights, right? So if you're someone like me that geeks out on work culture, I'm always reading the latest HBR or Harvard Business Review articles, things like that. I'm always ready and willing to share my opinion, things like that. Can be valuable and really cool to your network. educational content, interviews, Q&A sessions. We talked about blogs or articles. Again, LinkedIn is going to be a really great platform for you to create new content if that's something that you want to play with and explore. Storytelling, telling your personal narratives. And again, as long as you're comfortable, it doesn't have to be cancer related, or it does, right? Again, you are in control. So sharing your personal story, sharing your narrative, right? Infographics, social media content, the list goes on. So think about what are some of the content pieces that you resonate with, and start with one, right? And making that commitment to show up regularly. All right. So I know we zipped through a lot of information here, but I want to hear from you guys. Share it in the chat. What is one thing that you're taking away from today's discussion on personal branding and networking? What's one thing that really stood out to you about this conversation? Content creation, yep, focusing on my why, for sure. Leading with your why. Yes, I'm so glad that a lot of you are sharing that piece. If there's nothing else that you take from today's conversation, knowing your purpose, knowing your why, that's a really big question. So I don't want you to feel intimidated by having the perfect answer to that. Again, this is something that's going to evolve over time. But being led by your passions, your interests, right, your values, what's important to you, right? Those are the things that are going to get you out of bed every morning, right? So finding those things that you can lead with and you can really ground yourself in. What's one thing, right, that you're going to do this week? So we talked about crafting your personal brand statement. We talked about updating your LinkedIn profile, becoming more active on that platform, inviting someone to an interview, an informational interview, signing up to attend one networking event, right? Maybe doing one post or two posts on LinkedIn this week, right? So think about what is one thing that you can do. Yes, love this. Doing your 360 check, absolutely. Writing your personal brand statement on LinkedIn. Yep, love it. Yeah, it doesn't have to be a huge lift, right? It's those small, tiny actions that if done every single day build up to what you're after, right? So I know sometimes the job search can feel very overwhelming. There's so many things that you need to be doing, but really, really pacing yourself is an important key piece here, right? So centering rest, centering taking breaks, right? Centering joy. The job search, as Scott mentioned earlier at the top of the call, can be very grueling. There can be highs and lows, right? There can be lows for a couple of months. You don't know what's happening, right? So it's really, really important to take care of yourself, take care of your energy, right? And protect it, especially during this time of transition. And so with that said, I want to invite you to connect with me on LinkedIn. You can find me at linkedin.com/in/Ariane Hunter. I would love, love, love to connect with all of you here. So I also try to walk my talk here. So as long as we're sharing LinkedIn profiles, I definitely would welcome you to reach out to me on LinkedIn and connect with me there. And here's just a few resources here. So my book, Dreaming on Purpose, was recently released last August. So I would love to have you have a copy of that. This is going to be a personal career guide for you all. I also recommend Kelly Hoey. She's the author of Build Your Dream Network. There's a lot of great nuggets and insight there. So definitely grab your resources there. And we have some additional job search resources you can take a look at here. And with that said, I want to hand it back over to Scott. Thank you so, so much, y'all.
Thank you so much. Of course, I get a frog in my throat right as I turn my camera on. We're gonna get to Q&A in just a second. If you have any questions, again, drop them in the Q&A box. But I want to go through a few upcoming events we have. So this is the first of our 4-webinar job search suite. So we hope you'll join us for the next 3. Next month, we're going to be, the topic is job search tools using AI strategically. We're going to be joined by Adam Goldberg, who's an HR and talent acquisition uh, professional, and it's a really great way to use these kind of buzzwords that we're hearing a lot to your advantage. And then in June and July, we have first impressions, resumes, and LinkedIn, and then career shifting tips, tools, and techniques. Those are going to be led by Julie Jansen, who's a very long time CAC collaborator and career coach that many of you have probably seen her in other webinars and events that we've done in the past. So we hope that you'll join us for those. And then coming up in June, we have our national conference on work and cancer, which is going to be an all-day event happening again on Zoom. That's going to be June 27th, and registration is now open. You can click this link. And then we have our West Coast conference coming up in October. These are really named after the time zone that they're in, but they're all on Zoom and anybody can join from anywhere around the country. So we hope we'll see you there. Finally, here is my email. If you have any questions later on, feel free to reach out to me. You can also find me on LinkedIn. I am a little embarrassed to say that it probably has not been updated since I started at Cancer and Careers, so don't judge me for that, and I will be fixing that later on. Uh, but feel free to search me there. Don't confuse me with the British rugby player named Scott Sinclair. That's a common misconception that I get, but you should be able to find me there. And then I'm gonna just leave this up. It's again all of the requirements for those who are requesting CEs. You will have the evaluation will pop up in your browser when you close the Zoom window, and then you'll also be getting an email tomorrow, no later than 5 p.m. with everything as well. If you can't do that tonight. Uh, so with that, let's jump over to the Q&A. Um, the first question I have here is, this might be more for me than for you, but let's see what we can go do here. I'm looking for part-time for work part-time because I'm dealing with chronic fatigue and other long-term impacts of cancer and don't feel I can handle full-time yet. Do you have thoughts or advice on how to explain or frame that to people when I'm networking or applying to jobs? I feel like I need to explain it why I'm only looking for part-time, but don't want them to think that I might not be a great candidate because of that. Does this change if I'm disclosing my cancer history and trying to frame that as part of my experience or what I bring to the table? Uh, I'm going to just jump in quickly with some of our advice, which is, first of all, you are not obligated or required to share your medical history or treatment history or diagnoses. Uh, we meet people all the time who have questions like this about whether they should disclose in a job search and when. The first thing I'll say is it is a completely personal decision up to you about what you are comfortable with, what you want to share, et cetera, et cetera. Uh, the one thing that we suggest though is just think about where in the process you are. So something, let's say you put it in a cover letter about explaining a gap in your resume or why you're only looking for part-time work or whatever the reason might be. The person who's going to read that cover letter isn't going to have you there in the room with them to answer questions or kind of get to know you as a person first. Uh, so we usually recommend if you do want to disclose before you get hired to do it a little later on in the process. In terms of networking and explaining things there, again, it's all up to you about how comfortable you are in disclosure, what you want to share and all that. You can also just be vague about things too, and feel free to jump in with anything you have here. But you can say, I have family issues at home that I'm dealing with, and I only have time for 20 hours a week, or, I'm getting over something and I'm looking to dip my toe back in, but not ready for a full time. Like, you can be as vague as possible if you don't want to share something. And then if you really are open and you feel like it's going to help you explain why you are, then that is your choice, but just think through some of that options. And you know legally you're not allowed to discriminate against somebody who has a cancer diagnosis because of that. Obviously we have heard stories from all ends of spectrums proving that the the law and people following the law are two very different things. So just keep that in mind too as you're making these decisions. But any advice on, how to network part-time and how to explain that?
Yeah, no, I loved your answer, Scott, and I 1,000% agree. I would just say, kind of going back to what we were speaking about earlier in protecting your energy, protecting your mental health, and really getting clear on what that looks like and what that means for you. You owe no one an explanation for your needs and the things that you need to do your job well. And if that means that I'm only working part time, we need to honor that, right? So I think getting confident that you are out honoring your boundaries, right, and that you are protecting your health and your mental health and all the things that can allow you to perform at your best. So I would say, when you're in conversations, with folks, whether networking or an interview, focus on the positive, focus on your strengths. Okay. So people typically respond well when you're very clear on those things and they know how to work with you and they know the resources that you need. The right people will, right? And so if you're encountering folks that are just, difficult and, and that'll happen sometimes. This is in no way your fault or anything that you need to change about yourself. It just means that it's not the right opportunity. So I would just, again, suggest getting clear on what you need to perform at your best and articulating that and communicating that freely and in your power.
No, we are already over time, so I think this is going to be our last question. Again, if we didn't get to you, please shoot us an email. We are around if you think of something later tonight, tomorrow, a month from now. Feel free to reach out to us for one-on-one support. cancerandcareers@cew.org is the email that you can get us. The last question I have here for you is I keep finding job listings that I'm interested in, but when I read through it, I don't know if I'm actually qualified based on what they list as the requirements. Should I apply anyway?
Always yes. Always yes. The worst that what's the worst that can happen, right? What's the worst that can happen? I do, want to stay mindful that when you're applying to things sometimes it takes time. We're crafting the cover letter and the resume and we're tailoring it, so use your best judgment there, but I would say err on the side of apply anyway, right? I know sometimes we can encounter imposter syndrome. Sometimes we need to have all our of the qualifications checked off before we even apply. So we need to remind ourselves in those moments that if there's any hesitation there, what is that hesitation, and what is the worst that can happen if I do submit my application here. The other piece of it goes back to informational interviews. We talked about that earlier. So if there's an opportunity for you to connect with the company or with the hiring manager, I know sometimes this is tricky to achieve, but you can try that approach and see if there's any additional insight that you can get from someone who's either worked there before or currently works there, to get a little bit of a better understanding of what qualifications that they're seeking. But yeah, shoot your shot, right? What is the worst that can happen?
I agree completely. I mean, I think you want to have some kind of realistic view of it. You don't want to,
Sure.
apply to a job as a doctor if you've never been to med school or something like that. But
Sure.
if it says they're looking for 5 to 10 years of experience and you have 4 years of experience,
Yeah.
who cares? Just, if you are able to express your values and your everything that has been talked about today, I think they are willing to see that and overlook the 1 year difference of requirements, or you don't have this, you're not familiar with a computer program that they can teach you, or, like there's always things, and don't let one or two things in a job listing prevent you from finding something that otherwise matches up everything that you want and are qualified for, and et cetera, et cetera. Well, thank you so much, Ariane, for being here, and thank you everybody for joining us. This is great. Like I said, I'm going to update my LinkedIn profile this week and get that going. I hope everybody else has some good takeaways as well. But thank you and have a good night.
Thank you so much, Scott, and thank you all for joining. Have a great rest of your evening.